Alright, so apparently Sephiroth is technically available, way earlier than I was expecting. Of course, you had to complete the challenge in order to unlock him. Considering this is honestly a really unique and special occasion for Smash, I figured I should go all out with this challenge.
3, 2, 1, go!
You know what? Fine. If we have to do this the hard way, I'll go down with you. Just so I can end you a second time. I had an entire video game prepared that didn't include any Sephiroth stuff, but since he's here I need to focus on stuff about him. Also, did anyone else get random facts vibes from Sakurai's presentation? Like with how he went over the function of Sephiroth's neutral specials in relation to PSI Magnet and such? No? Just me? Okay. One thing Sakurai didn't go super in depth about is this new advantage mechanic, which is very unique in that it doesn't have a static % activation number nor a meter. So I did a lot of testing here with a lot of confusing results, but here in training mode the advantage mechanic seems to work as follows. When you initially start training mode, the person who gets advantage is the first one to hit 65% or higher. And from here on out, I'm going to be referring to this percent in which you can start getting your wing as the threshold. Anyways, if both of them are at 65% or higher at the same time, say from resetting training mode, the person who gets the wing is the first one to have their percent go higher than the other person's. So once the CPU here has their wing, I can only get my wing once my percent exceeds theirs. This is all true regardless of how many CPUs are present and what level the CPU is. However, if you KO the opponent once at all, even if you reset training mode, your threshold will now be at 90%. But when you add in one or more CPU, your threshold goes back to 65. However, this is only if you get 1 KO. It seems that if you get a total of 2 KOs, then even if the CPUs are spawned in, the threshold goes back to 90%. Though for some reason, the thresholds for the other CPUs also go to 90%. Outside of the one you KO'd though. Which does mean if you KO a different CPU here, that one will also have their threshold move down to 65%. Also, you can remove this permanent KO count if you just leave training mode altogether. This is mostly interesting since it seems to imply that training mode keeps track of KOs in some way, even after resetting. It may be a bug with Sephiroth specifically, or it might tell us something about training mode as a whole. It's still very interesting. There's a lot more tiny information I could go over, but I figured this basic information is good enough for now. And I'd also go over the specifics of how this mechanic works in real matches, but I figure at that point I'm turning into less of a trivia channel and more of a tutorial channel. So to sum all of that up, on even stocks, the threshold is 80%. If you're a stock below, it's 40, and a stock ahead, it's 85. And if you're 2 stocks below, it's at 30, and 2 stocks ahead, it's at like 110. But here's the interesting part. That's in a match with 3 stocks total. Going to a match with 99 total stocks, the threshold starts at 80% on even stocks, but with a 1 stock difference that threshold is at 70% and 85%, and at 2 stock difference is at 60 and 90. And after that the percent stopped changing for a while. I decided to SD a ton of times to make a gigantic difference in stocks, and once I was at about half the total amount I tried again, and Sephiroth got his wing at 30% here. So it seems that the exact percents depend on not only the stock difference, but also the relativity of those stocks to the total amount of stocks. I guess I kinda just went over the specifics of how this mechanic works in real matches, huh? Maybe I am a tutorial channel. Anyhow, I won't even bother trying to give you the exact percents for every single stock difference possible. Just know that there's a lot of possibilities, and if you're here just for the competitive perspective, focus on that test I did at 3 stocks. Also, this is my last thing about this wing mechanic, but VG Chat asks how this advantage mechanic works in stamina mode. Testing with a base HP of 100, you seem to get your wing once you go below about 35 HP on even stocks. So 35% of the total health seems to be the basis, meaning of course with the base health of say 200 HP, you get your wing once you drop below 70 HP, and so on. And with stock differences, it seems to follow similar rules to before. With 3 total stocks, on his last stock, Sephiroth's threshold is at like 65 HP, or 65% of the total amount. And the Sephiroth with all of his stocks has his threshold at like 15 HP. And like before, this threshold adjustment will change a ton of times depending on the number of total stocks. Great, I'll be spending more time on this topic in the next video, since I have more things to cover, but for now I'd like to move on to other aspects of this character just to bring some variety here. If you want more information in that future video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and keep an eye out for that upload. You won't regret it. Anyhow, Poke21 asks if Sephiroth's forward air can grab onto Steve's blocks. It was a little bit precise, but yes, Sephiroth's forward air will stab through Steve's blocks like a normal wall. By the way, I'm going to be going over a lot of things regarding this mechanic, so I'm just going to keep referring to it as impaling now, since it sounds sick like Sephiroth is. It seems like if you try to do it on dirt or wood, the impale breaks them before he can really hang on, but with stone and iron you can stay impaled for a while, even longer for the latter. This did make me think about how Steve's blocks worked with other wall things. I couldn't seem to wall jump off of Steve's blocks. Corrin's pin kinda worked, but only on the surface of the block, not the sides. So the blocks didn't really function as a wall here as much as they did just a solid surface. Byleth's up special seems to work with the blocks though, but only if the block is high enough. King DDD's Gordo has a chance to stick on the wall, but I was never able to get it to stick on Steve's blocks. And Luigi has a chance to get stuck in the wall after his green missile, but I was also never able to get that to happen with Steve's blocks. So there we go. Continuing with the impale mechanic, Golden Yoshi 1 asks how many times you can use this mechanic and for how long. After you impale, you can only stick around for a couple of seconds before being forced to fall off. But you can impale again afterwards if you have enough room to. Also, your jump after impaling does not count as your normal jump, meaning you can do it regardless of whether or not you have your double jump available. However, you cannot do this infinitely. No matter what, you can only impale 3 times total before touching the ground, just like a tether. After that, it'll simply not work. So as a stalling technique, it's good but not foolproof, but as a vertical recovery technique, it's probably among the best in the game. Continuing, Lionel asks if Sephiroth's sword will appear from the other side of the wall after an impale. Sakurai explicitly mentioned in his presentation that the down air will go through platforms and still hit. So I figure it makes sense to then ask about the impale. And sure enough, the sword will go right through this thin wall, clear as day. And also sure enough, it'll still have a hitbox on the other side. It'll deal the same damage as your normal forward air does, 11% at the tip. But what's very interesting to note is that if you do a short hop before impaling, it'll still do 11% on the other side, despite the fact that a short hop forward air should do about 9% instead. So it seems that impaling is not affected by this short hop multiplier. Next, Triblight asks what happens if you impale a rotating platform. And all that happens is you'll impale it, go up for a little bit, but then you'll be forced off at a certain angle. So no weird glitches or animations happening here. At some point Sephiroth would just be forced off. Though this question reminds me of one I got from Luft, asking what happens if you're buried when the stage spins, like on Brinstar Depths. I think our rotating platform here works well enough for this question. And just like with impaling, if you get buried here, you'll move to the side for a bit, but then be forced out of the bury once you reach a certain angle. Also, if you place a pitfall onto the rotating surface, it'll then just disappear once it reaches about the same angle, so you'd be wise to keep that in mind. Next, JJ asks about the name of the series used for Final Fantasy music. Beforehand, the series name for Final Fantasy's music category was just Final Fantasy VII. And you can still see that on this section. However, over here we can see that it's called Final Fantasy VII Series, which makes sense. All the songs featured are either from Final Fantasy VII or Advent Children. However, going over to the Spirit, the series name is now called Final Fantasy Series, not specifying the number or anything like that, so that's pretty cool. It's a nice reminder that the series is finally getting more well-deserved rep. Though it's worth noting that the Final Fantasy VII Remake soundtrack is, as far as I'm aware, heavily restricted by copyright, meaning there's a good chance that if streamers play any of this music while playing the game, they could get a DMCA strike. I don't know what the chances are exactly, but they're still possible, which is why I didn't use any of this music in this video like I normally do for DLC uploads. Be safe out there, content creators. Next up, Mr. Martian asks if Sephiroth's Shadow Flare can stack with those from another Sephiroth. Normally, the maximum amount of Shadow Flares you can have circling the opponent is 5. But if you have one opponent use Shadow Flare, the other opponent's Shadow Flare won't add to the count at all. So once one person's Shadow Flare has been applied, it seems that only that person can further apply them, meaning the limit is still 5. Okay, next up I want to point out how Sakurai mentioned in the direct that Sephiroth cannot use Giga Flare in the air, since it takes too long to charge. I've been seeing a lot of comments and questions regarding this, but no, if you get high enough off stage you can still use Giga Flare and even recover. So the move is not locked from use in the air. I imagine that was just a bit of a mistranslation, or perhaps Sakurai was just referring to its use over the stage or something. Either way, the move can still function just fine in the air. Next, Damian Peterson asks how much damage Sephiroth's Scintilla can take before it breaks. The test here makes use of Ganondorf's up smash. Notice the little charging sound effect that takes place at the beginning of its charge. Letting go at the first sound usually results in about 29% of damage, with variance in the decimal place. Letting go at the second sound usually results in about 30% of damage, same deal. Scintilla blocks the damage fine at the first charge, as I'll call it, meaning it soaked up about 29% worth of damage. However, Scintilla then breaks at the second charge, meaning it shattered at about 30% worth of damage. So I think it's safe to say that Scintilla's percent threshold is at 30%, meaning any move that does 30% or more will break it. As for its damage output, it always seemed to do about 36% at the point right before it broke. So I reckon that's the most amount of damage the move can do without outside multipliers affecting things. Next up, Kyle Walk gives me a little fact regarding Sephiroth's up tilt. This is mostly referring to the mechanics of how the opponent goes from this first hit all the way up to the blade. I found this easiest to visualize when you're slowed down when you use the move, and when you use it, the opponent just sort of teleports to the top. It happens super quickly too, but they go from the ground all the way up here in a matter of frames. I guess it makes sense, because if they want to bring the opponent into the sword, they gotta bring him pretty far up, because, the sword's kinda big. However, I didn't notice anything weird happening when the opponent was at 999%, even though some multi-hits like to screw up at these high percents. So you can probably just mark this down as an interesting multi-hit mechanic that may or may not mess up in a match for various reasons. Oh, also Sephiroth's final smash. First off, great choice using Supernova. A part of me wishes the final smash actually lasted like 2 minutes. But Sakurai did something beautiful here that I really like. Yes, this is a cutscene final smash, but it's also not. Instead of just making everyone get launched just as every other cutscene final smash does, instead this one gives them status effects. It's really cool. Anyways, I got plenty of people asking me what all the effects are, and since I was also curious, there's a daze effect, a flower effect, reverse controls effect, a sleep effect, a slowdown effect, or it can just launch you, as Sakurai himself listed in the presentation. They're all effects items can already give to players, but it's still really cool. However, Random Name asks a very intriguing question in regards to that daze effect and Jigglypuff. The sound effect that plays when it happens is that of a shield break, and Sakurai himself calls it a shield break when he points it out in the presentation. And sure enough, if a Jigglypuff caught in the final smash undergoes that daze effect, they will be instantly KO'd. So this daze is directly a shield break and Jigglypuff reacts accordingly. This is very neat stuff. I guess it's the first time there's an item that forcefully breaks your shield, even if you aren't shielding. Lastly for this video, I have to break some very sad news to y'all. Unfortunately, the setup to make almost anyone in the game T-pose is now officially gone. It took them a while to get to this glitch, but they've finally done it. I've showcased it quite a few times on this channel, and I'm honestly really sad to see it go. Especially since now we can't see Sephiroth T-pose. This is a very sad day. However, the Z-axis glitch still seems to work, so that's good. And again, if you want to know more about any of these things, or well, about anything, just check out the rest of my channel. It's a very beautiful channel, a very tremendous channel. I'm sure you'll like it. Anyhow, I think that'll be it for today. I'd like to thank my patrons Felipe Morla, Avenkaru, Burbo, Linkdorf, Raighne, Feurolant, Aman Shareef, Stan LOONA, and Xammary. I think the way they handled Sephiroth was really cool. This Sephiroth challenge idea is really a great way to hype up this character and make him seem even cooler than he already is. Though I do have to say I kinda wish you had to beat him on very hard in order to unlock him early. Being able to unlock him by beating easy mode is a little bit lame. It may as well just be officially released if that's the case. It's just painfully easy. But it's still really cool. Anyways, I'm currently moved over to and I'm learning how to use Premiere Pro. I'm actually taking a class for it on Skillshare, who is not sponsoring me, but I would love it if they did. Also, I've been thinking about maybe getting together a side channel where I just upload clips and montages of just TF2 highlights and whatnot. Minor editing, no commentary or anything here, just a bunch of clips. I have a ton of these clips that I could use. So if you're interested in that, leave some comments below. I might actually pursue that if there's even an ounce of support there. And with that, stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.